Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Jared Hornsby, and I'm here today to help answer any general or technical questions that you may have. But before we get started, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, From Trends to Triumphs, Crafting Future-Ready Retail Experiences. We have two sponsors I'd like to thank today. We have Crownpeak and CI&T. To tell us a little bit more about Crownpeak, we have Imran Chowdhury, the VP of Product Marketing. Imran, take it away.
Well, thank you, everyone. Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Thank you very much for joining this session. I'm Imran Chowdhury, as Jared said, VP of Product Marketing here at Crownpeak. Crownpeak are a digital experience platform. So when you think about digital experience, there are three components to our business. There's the content management, product discovery, which is very much core of today's conversation, and then accessibility. I'm joined by Melissa Minkow, Director of Retail Strategy at CI&T. And Melissa, I'll hand over to you for intros at your session in a moment. But today, folks, we are going to share insights from recent research into the current temperament of today's consumer. And that's under the lens of product discovery. So how is current economic times and how are the tools around product discovery, that being search, merchandising and recommendations, how are they influencing and impacting the purchasing decisions of today? What are some of the challenges that consumers are facing, but equally some of the challenges that merchants are facing? And we're going to look at that a little bit deeper off the back of the data that Melissa's going to show us, and look at how some of the leading brands and merchants of today are approaching some of these challenges and addressing them. We'll also show some examples of some of these challenges and the ways in which we as Crownpeak are addressing them alongside CI&T. But first, the research. Melissa, quick intros and then straight into your research, if that's okay.
Sure. Thanks so much, Imran. Hi, everyone. As Imran said, my name is Melissa Minkow. I'm the Director of Retail Strategy at CI&T. CI&T is a digital consultancy, and we specialize in composable commerce integrations and solutions. And every year, we publish our annual Connected Retail Report. The first half of that report is dedicated to the findings from our consumer insights research, and that's where we ask them a ton of questions on their shifting shopping behaviors and perspectives. This year, we surveyed 1,012 U.S. consumers across all genders, generations, and races to just gauge how they're feeling in this economic environment and how it's impacting their shopping behaviors. And then the second half of that report is dedicated to a retailer audit that we conduct every year to highlight and showcase the retailers that we think are the ones to watch for the next year, given the type of digital experiences they're providing. So as far as this year's Connected Retail research, what we found was that after 2-ish years of inflation, consumers are really feeling the wear and tear of that on their pockets. So 80% of consumers in our survey said that the economy has slightly or significantly impacted their shopping behaviors or their habits. And 70% of that 80% said they're trying to spend less overall because of inflation, focusing on the lowest cost items. We know now that after 2-ish years of inflation, consumers are really understanding the impact of that on their budgets, and they've become extremely strategic in their shopping path to purchase. They're looking for the best deals constantly, and they don't feel like they should have to sacrifice the retail experience in order to find the lowest cost items. And in addition to price, consumers also told us that convenience is a really important value that they're looking to indulge when they're shopping. We presented consumers with a lengthy list of reasons why they might not shop at a physical store and why they might not shop at an online store. And what we found was that the first reason they might not shop at a physical store or an online store pertained to price, but the second most commonly selected reason had to do with convenience. So for physical stores, it had to do with the location of the store. If the store was too far away from where they're working or where they live or where they might be passing by, they're much less inclined to shop there. And for an online store, if the website was hard to navigate, they were much less interested in shopping there. And then on the flip side, we presented them with a lengthy list of reasons why they would download a retailer's app. And what we saw was that the first reason had to do with their idea that they would be getting the best prices through the app. And then the third most commonly selected response, once again, had to do with convenience, where they said that they're shopping that retailer so often, it's just more convenient to download the app. There's a lot of data in this connected retail report. And at the very end of this presentation, there's a QR code to download the report. And you'll see that we ask a lot more questions about, why they would download a retailer's app and how many retailer apps they feel they typically are downloading and using. But the common denominator in terms of the motivations behind which channels they're shopping is really price, convenience, and then lastly, the quality of the products that they would be getting at a given retailer. We also gave a battery of loyalty questions in this survey. And when we asked consumers which factors are most responsible for why they're loyal to a brand or retailer, the first most commonly selected response had to do with the products being of the highest quality. So today's consumer is really kind of triangulating their research around three really important variables and making the decision of which retailer to shop based on the quality of the products, the lowest prices they can get, and how convenient the shopping journey is. Those are really the three criteria that today's consumer is using to measure the shopping experience. And ultimately, this really ladders up into a desire for clarity and efficiency. That's what today's consumer is looking for after, and during 2 years of inflationary pressures. We showed consumers two options for what they might be looking for out of a website, whether they would prefer it to be fun and engaging or just a website that is really straight to the point and helping them find what they're looking for. And it was actually really surprising. The vast majority of respondents told us that they would prefer a website that is straight to the point, helping them find exactly what they're looking for right away. So that desire for clarity and efficiency is really prevalent in what they're looking for out of a website. And then we also started asking them questions about the search experience. And this directly feeds into what Imran's going to be speaking about. But ultimately, what we saw is that consumers want the best, most personalized search experience for what they're looking for on a day-to-day basis. So we showed them this statement: I choose which online retailers to shop at based on the quality of their search results. And 68% said that that was true for them, that they are deciding between retailers given what type of online search experience they're providing. They really want it to be elevated. And this was also reflected in another statement we showed them when we asked them to decide if this was true or false for their ideal path to purchase. And 70% said that yes, they're expecting retailers to understand their most complex search queries. This was really eye-opening, just given the level of specificity that consumers have when they're shopping today. They are typing crazy specific things into that search bar, and they expect retailers to be able to point them very quickly to the exact items they're looking for. And they really want this to be personalized as well as elevated. And that really speaks to just the level of expectations they have today. So in addition to our connected retail research, in this past April, we published a piece on personalization. And from that survey, one of the questions we asked was, we presented them a list of options for what they could get back in exchange for providing their personal information. And the second most commonly selected response was a search process that's quick and tailored to what they're looking for. So not only do they have these high expectations on the search results, but they also just want the overall process to be highly personalized for them. And once again, Imran's going to talk about what that can look like, what kind of the ideal state of a search experience would look like in today's digital world. But really quickly, I also just wanted to shed some light on the fact that AI is key in providing that and facilitating that for retailers. But that being said, consumers are a little nervous about what AI looks like and what it could mean for their experience, specifically what generative AI looks like, especially. So in our connected retail research, we did ask consumers their thoughts on retailers leveraging AI to improve the shopping experience. There was a 50-50 split, which is pretty rare for our community, but they did express some concerns with retailers leveraging AI. Of the 59% of consumers that said they understood what generative AI was, 67% said they have concerns over retailers using generative AI. And we did probe a little further and we asked them, what do those concerns actually look like or mean? The first most commonly selected concern had to do with privacy and security. And this is, of course, no surprise. Consumers always worry about the level of personal information they're providing. But the second most common response had to do with the search experience. And they said they worry that generative AI will actually jeopardize the quality of the search results when used. So we know that consumers really care about the search experience, that they are deciding on a retailer given the quality of the search process, how personalized it is, and how adaptive it is to their natural language. And so it's really important that merchants today address this concern by delivering quality search results, not necessarily the largest quantity of items. And Imran's going to speak a lot more about that and kind of this paradox of choice that's confronting consumers today and how retailers can provide the best experience given that kind of conflict of interest. So without further ado, Imran, I will hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Melissa. So this second half, as it were, of the session, we're going to take a number of the points that Melissa's spoken of. So some of those was around relevance, clarity, speed, accuracy, but equally, how do you deal with that challenge when you're a merchant, especially if you're using traditional tools for product discovery? And as I say, a reminder of product discovery from our perspective is the act of searching, so how someone searches for an item, how they're browsing, and therefore how the merchandiser is merchandising that assortment, and equally the recommendations that we may be giving. Ultimately, we want to try and drive those conversions. Now, let's kind of change it up a little bit and maybe kind of frame the challenge in maybe a different way to the norm. And Melissa, you mentioned the paradox of choice, and you've probably seen this slide too many times from me. But this guy's Barry Schwartz, and he wrote a book quite a few years ago now, which was called The Paradox of Choice. And it was interesting. It's always caught me because I think it's a challenge that we are challenged by as merchants, but equally consumers, and it causes confusion and disruption in their buying decisions. But let me try and explain it a little bit. So in a nutshell, what Barry argues is that mainstream thinking suggests that choice gives us freedom. The more choice you have, the more freedom you have. And logic would agree with that. But Barry argues that actually today we've got way too much choice. If you think about our brains and the bandwidth that we have in our brains, we're already overwhelmed with work, with life, all the things going around us. And when we add more choice to that, or too much choice, then that bandwidth, it starts to struggle, especially if we need to make a decision. And if we've got too many choices, making that decision creates us anxiety. We're kind of fearful of making the right decision, the wrong decision. When we do make a decision, we might be fearful around, was that the right decision the way that I've gone? So what I wanted to try and do is kind of put this in the perspective of a consumer where they're getting way too many choices and how that is creating a challenge in them making their buying decision. And I'm going to do it in a very simple way, and hopefully we get some audience participation. But I'm actually going to use, in some ways, kind of a complex search query. And I say complex because it's more than one word, and we'll touch on that in a moment. And I'm just going to go to, let's say, a major enterprise fashion retailer. So a fashion retailer that is international. And I'm going to go type in men's white t-shirt. So what I'm going to ask is, Jared, could you just pop up the poll and ask the audience, if I go type in this search query, how many men's white t-shirts do you think I'm going to get as a search result? So, Jared, if you could just pop that poll up, that would be great.
That poll's been sent, and you'll be able to see the results in the surveys tab.
Great. Okay, so just wait a little bit longer for people to kind of populate it. Okay, the numbers are coming up. So as you see on the options, one option's, I'm going to get 5 to 20 t-shirts, 20 to 50, 50 to 100. And then the big one, obviously, is kind of, 500 to 1,000 odd. So I'm just going to give it one more second. Okay, cool. So I'm not too sure if you all see this as in terms of the survey poll, but I can. And right now, the majority of you would say that if I go and type that into, as I say, an international fast fashion retailer's website, that men's white t-shirt, the vast majority of you, 45% roughly, say that you would expect, get between 20 to 50 men's white t-shirts back. Okay. Would you like to know the actual number? 2,000. Personally, 2,000 men's white t-shirts, and you can scroll through the site and all the different pages, they all kind of look the same. That is just way too much choice. And no wonder we have people scrolling through pages or even giving up because there is way too much choice. And it's also a hard task for merchandisers. So if you imagine you've got that number of men's white t-shirts to even think about assorting, how do you actually go and assort those on your product listing pages? Measure the effectiveness of how that's being assorted, let alone manage it. It's quite difficult. But this is what we're seeing. And the placement of these products is vital. What you see here is the distribution of a product listing page based on the proportion of clicks on that product listing page. So as you would expect, this top row, that's the critical one. That's the one where she's going to get the highest clicks and where your merchandising team are going to want to be trying to put forward their best converting products. And generally, from customers that we've spoken to and worked with as they've joined Crownpeak, what we found is one of the challenges they've got is this is manual. Often these top rows, so these critical rows, are manually assorted. There is merchandisers that are dragging and dropping or manually creating those top rows. That's a lot of effort. There's really no strategy behind it. And often more than not, it's generally your best sellers. If you're always putting your best sellers at the top, then your stock turnover for the rest of the products in your catalog is going to really suffer. What we're seeing, though, is the leaders are implementing some form of merchandising strategy. And that merchandising strategy is a blend of visual merchandising. So you're looking to try and curate some form of experience, some form of logical layering of the experience of that product listing page. But fundamentally, there's some form of strategy behind it. So here's an example where you might have an influencer strategy, which is taking into account the newest items that have just come into your catalog against the highest purchasers, but also what's available, okay? You may have highest converting where you're looking at number of purchasers, again, with stock availability. There's no point in populating your best sellers or your highest converting sellers if there is no availability, or if you've only got a number of sizes still in stock, such as small or large, but no other sizes in stock. It's not going to convert effectively. You're wasting space. But the challenge of all this is how do you do it in an automated way? And being able to select the right tools to not only implement these kind of strategies, but also implement it where you're removing that burden on the merchandisers is quite critical. And that's what we've been doing with many of our merchants today. So what would it look like? So that's that same page, but what you see is a blend of visual merchandising and then also some merchandising strategy. So this top line here, that's what we're going to populate with new in. That's the new stuff. That's the new campaign. We want to give that visibility. But what we might want to do is blend that with what's actually new that's in, but it's also getting the most interest. And it's the highest converting, okay? You could add availability there, but arguably because it's new in, then we should have stock for a reasonable amount of time. The second layer, because when I was typing for men's white t-shirt, I could just be looking for a plain one versus a graphic one. We know that. So let's curate with visually create here, but let's do it in a way whereby we're applying our best sellers with availability, okay? So we're making sure that what we're populating is in full sizes and is available so we can sell it, but also has an attribute, and that attribute might just be plain, or it might be slim fit, or it might be something else, but we can apply an attribute from a product and automatically push that here based on this strategy. And then often what we see is many brands have some form of sponsorship or some form of campaign. We want to give that visibility on the product listing page. So here, what you have is, let's say, most trending, and that's different to bestseller, because most trending is the products that are getting a lot of interest in a very short period of time versus a long one, and maybe the brand that is being sponsored. So this is where we are visually curating an experience. It's got its nuances. It's not as impactful as, let's say, color blocks, which is very common with our customers. But you've also got some form of merchandising strategy. And that merchandising strategy is there because it is going to drive engagement. It's going to drive revenue. But it can only do that if it's automated. If it's automated, it allows you to scale, allows you to control those strategies, but scale them across multiple pages. And here's some examples from a number of our customers that we've averaged out. Those sites that may have been manually curated and in the realms of 50 to 500, then how would it be impacted if we could actually apply these merchandising strategies, but apply them in an automated way for double the page count? And what we've seen on average is the amount of traffic that's also generated and the additional revenue. And this is for a company that's in the realms of 400 million online. So there's real revenue that's available here by building in some form of strategy. But equally, if you can do it in an automated way, it allows you to scale, and it also improves the merchandiser's efficiencies. On average, we see about 60% of the daily tasks being reduced. So when we're talking to many of our merchants that are looking at the bottom line, how to build more efficiencies in their team, this is a very key supporter of that. So what do we think is worse than too much choice? Melissa, I feel like I need to pick on you, because that doesn't feel like it feels like a free-word situation, which may not be very helpful on a poll. So, what do you think is the worst than too much choice? And arguably, you probably know the answer to this because you've seen the slides. But, what do you think it is?
Yeah, I'd say it's no choice at all.
You definitely saw the slides. So the worse than too much choice is no choice at all. That's one, not a good experience for the consumer, but two, it's a missed opportunity. Yeah, it's a missed opportunity to actually sell something. On average, we see 20% of all search queries coming back with 0 search results or completely irrelevant results that just frustrate customers. So to your point, Melissa, and the research you've shown, there's probably a little reminder in the next slide or two, this is quite important, and it's a missed opportunity, and one actually with AI, it can be addressed quite quickly. So why do we get ourselves in this situation? There's 2 graphs here, and just bear with me because I'm not too sure if my scroller kind of shows. But if I ask you to point to the right-hand side graph first, okay. So this is basically the type of queries that your sites are going to get hit by. So this one-word phrase, kind of shoes, pants, T-shirt, they're one-word, very simple search queries. But because they're so simple, people are in that discovery phase. And they're going to get a lot of volume. And to be honest, it's probably low intent, but they're actually going to purchase, okay? Then when they get to kind of 2-3 words, so men's shoes, okay, you're starting to get a little bit closer as to what you're trying to find. They're starting to get a feel in terms of, I kind of have an idea of what I'm looking for, and you're starting to see the intent improve, okay? So the volume of those is kind of less, but your intent is starting to improve. Now when it gets really complex, red Nike men's running shoes, I know, and to your point, Melissa, people know exactly what they want. Help me find it fast, because I'm impatient and I know what I want and I'm here to buy it. When people are very prescriptive in these search queries, which are complex, and as Melissa said, it's increasingly becoming an expectation, they have the highest intent. I know what I'm looking for. Help me find it fast because I want to get to the checkout and I want to be out the door. Okay, it's the very highest intent. The challenge is that manual and traditional search engines and merchandising solutions require search optimization to be done by teams. It requires rules, building of synonyms, and continual optimization of them. And that's where we come to this left-hand side. So the stuff in the orange and kind of the tangerine, that's where merchandisers traditionally spend their time. That's kind of the one-word phrases that have the highest volume of traffic or queries. So it makes sense to go and optimize them and spend the time optimizing them. When we kind of get to the green, okay, we'll spend a bit of time on that. So that's kind of the 2, maybe 3-word phrases. Again, the volume is quite high. We start to see commonality with those queries. We can identify them very easily. And because we can do that, we can optimize them quite well. But the problem is this 20%. This is where you have, let's call them unpopular searches, as in the volume is very low. They're highly unique and they're highly complex. This is the area which is that 20% missed opportunity I spoke of. And this is the area in which AI and what our leading retailers are doing is leveraging AI to focus on these areas. They don't want their merchants spending time here because the amount of effort to reward, it doesn't stack up for manually doing it with people. But if you can leverage AI, and it does make sense, and the results are pretty good. They're pretty good, and they're getting more accurate. Now, Melissa, just on your point around privacy, here, the privacy issue is kind of less. We're not kind of using this behavioral data to actually make forward any recommendations or anything along those lines. What we're doing is we're looking at how a search query relates to a product and help improve the accuracy to that search query. And it's important, as Melissa has mentioned, people are choosing the retailers that they're shopping on based on the quality of their search queries. We're all impatient these days. If we know exactly what we're looking for, help me find it and get out. And the complexity of these search queries is just growing, especially as we see, dare I say it, the likes of ChatGPT, Alexa, et cetera, we are all expecting that if I know what I want and I type it into my search bar, you should understand it and you should be able to give me something that is relevant. Now, one of the most popular examples we've got is actually Screwfix. So Screwfix, major DIY trades business here in the UK. And this is the before and after. So here you have quite a complex search query. So on the left-hand side, you've got waterproof electric cable connector. Okay. Now, originally what you would get is cable connectors, but they're not waterproof. And notice the number of matches that were found. Okay, 14. That's a very complex search query. And actually they do have those products, but because of the way that traditional search works, didn't pick up the relevance, the context, or provide the right match of products that were available in the catalog. And you can see that in the after effect. So after the implementation of AI, what you see here is extremely relevant products being populated. You also see an improvement to the number of matched products. So you're offering more products that are relevant versus hiding them, and you're ensuring that these products that are relevant are right at the top. Now, if you think of a catalog which is extremely wide and deep, this had major effect for them. Major effect where it's now even rolled out into their stores, and we're talking major in terms of revenue opportunity. So what do we see is possible from these types of solutions? Okay. Well, we do see that 20% issue as an issue that can be addressed. Out of our customer base that have come to us and we've implemented these solutions, what we've seen is about 98% of that zero search result actually being eradicated. We've been able to automate it. Unfortunately, I can't tell you the public name of who this retailer is, but they were able to achieve that without any manual intervention. And we've been able to do this in a way where we've got accelerators for grocery, homeware, and fashion, where we understand those kind of search behaviors, those search queries and products, and we can get you up and running very fast. But this is a major missed opportunity. A lot of retailers that we meet are missing out on, and one that can be quickly addressed. And the importance of this is, the average search to add to basket. If you're providing more relevant search queries, if you're merchandising your assortment effectively, then you're going to be able to drive better add to basket and ultimately conversion. Okay. So how does it work? So what we're doing at all points is we're looking at user activity, we're looking at users' traits, and we're looking at the catalog, the product catalog. And that data is allowing us to feed into our intelligence layer. And within that intelligence layer, we are using AI. So Crownpeak, we have our own algorithm library. But what we've always felt was important was to never be that black box. And that black box has got two or three different views of that. The first one is we don't believe that we have all of the best algorithms in the world. Okay, if anyone's telling you that, they're kind of, it's fake. Okay, there are so many different algorithms for different use cases. As an industry, we need to be more open. So a principle and a philosophy of Crownpeak is actually our intelligence layer is open to all algorithms. So you might want to use Sensei, Einstein, or any other algorithm out there. We allow you to bring those into our platform, and within our platform allow you to manage them, even A/B test them. Because fundamentally, if it's an open source algorithm, third party, or one you've made yourself, the best thing to do in any AI platform is to be able to manage, measure, and optimize an A/B test which one's the best combination for you. And from that, what we can then start to build is kind of like a product fingerprint. A product fingerprint, this product has these attributes, but it also matches and aligns with these kind of activities, these kind of queries, and these kind of traits. And that helps us build this intelligence layer whereby we can automate some of these results for search queries, but also look to apply controls. Controls that merchandisers can then use, be it for visual merchandising or controlling what brands or strategies are being implemented for the display of your product assortment or the recommendations off the back of it. Now, we've got a whole host of demoware, we've got a whole host of data, case references, and all of that good stuff you would expect. And one of the things that we'd welcome, and you'll see in our follow-up, is, as Melissa has mentioned, we will be sharing with you our research, our case references, and we're also launching a site audit option for those retailers that are joining on this call. We are more than happy to provide a health check over your current e-commerce site and provide you a report and presentation of where it's strong and where there are opportunities for weakness. So you will see that in the follow-up in the next few days. On that note, Melissa, anything else you'd like to add?
I don't think so. I mean, I guess just, yeah, if that QR code isn't working for you, you can also go to CI and the word and spelled out, T.com and download the report there. And our personalization research is there as well on the site.
Cool.
All right. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Imran, for your presentation. Now we're going to get into some Q&A. Up first, we have a question here from Guy. How would you characterize scalability and continuous optimization during peak demand?
Yeah, so characterizing it is, so one of the challenges we often see, especially if using manual techniques, is people will place products in a certain row. And during peak, those rows, either the stock availability starts to dwindle or sizing disparity starts to become an issue, or maybe actually pricing is an issue. So being able to do it at scale is taking some form of strategy, but being able to allow that strategy to populate with the right products based on the data in real time. So the scalability question is kind of, how do we implement these strategies, but in real time be able to populate it with the right products? Because what might be let's call it the most trending at this time, and maybe has the highest availability, within 5 hours or 6 hours, that might actually not be the most trending, and maybe actually availability is pretty much out of stock. So you need to populate it with something else. And that's where the algorithms can help you, but they can help you underneath the control of those merchandising strategies that you implement. The second thing is scalability when you think about internationalization. So how do you go and manage? So for example, we have Puma, a customer of ours, that's managing something in the region of about 20, 30 sites globally. each of those sites have different preferences per region. So again, how do you match those preferences with what stock you've got, and what is what is available, and what is going to kind of convert with the highest propensity based on those regions, those preferences, and availability.
Gotcha. All right, up next. How personalized should retail organizations be? How do you balance personalization with invasion of privacy?
That's a great question. There's a really important fine line that retailers need to be walking. I will say Gen Z, the youngest generation, and Gen Alpha too, tend to be most receptive to sharing their data if they know that the trade-off is they'll get a highly personalized experience. The key also, though, both Imran's research and my research has shown that consumers don't want all the options of items to be ruled out for them automatically. They want to start with not a whole world of options like the 2,000 products that Imran showed, but they do want to be shown a healthy amount of options just so that they don't feel like they're missing out on any potential products. So the key is to definitely be personalized, but not hyper personalized, so that you're demonstrating that you're collecting even more data than they're willing to surrender. The key is really demonstrating that you are only leveraging the data they're giving you permission to use and in their best interests. And Imran also kind of alluded to this, but the key also is not saving that data and keeping it for the long term. And the Crownpeak product discovery tool does not do that. So, there are no real concerns with privacy from that perspective as well, because that is a big point of concern for many consumers today. It's just, how long are you even holding my data? What else are you using it for, if not to create this personalized experience in the moment?
I think if I can, Melissa, I think we've talked about this before, so it's not news to you, but it's this value exchange. Mm-hmm. I think we've probably, as an industry, could have been better with that value exchange. If I'm giving you my email, if I'm allowing you to market to me, why was it during peak you just continually send me the same generic promotion where you're just giving me discounts versus actually something that's actually personalized? So I think there's some kind of work back in terms of trying to rebuild that value exchange, which again caused some of this issue with consumers, kind of with trust and privacy.
Yeah.
Gotcha. In regard to using an AI algorithm to better produce search and merchandising results, what rates have you seen increase in terms of like conversion rates and things like that? How have you seen AI algorithms impact these numbers?
Yeah, so I think it was on one of the slides, but if we're going to pure conversion, we see kind of that search to conversion around 57% improvement. But remember, that's the average increase that we see in terms of those searches to actual conversion rate. And a lot of that actually probably comes from that 20% missed opportunity I spoke of. We're able to tackle that. And that's kind of one area of that 57%. So I don't want, to fluffy-coat it. That 57% is a big number, yeah. But also be mindful that within that, we're also tackling that 20% issue of the zero search results and highly irrelevant search results. So we're kind of fixing them, which also contributes to that 57%. Either way, it's good, yeah. But there are some major opportunities that are being missed here by many retailers. And that's kind of one of the, as we call it, kind of the low-hanging fruits that we see as kind of a phase one whenever we go live with a retailer. It's always a big bonus for sure.
Gotcha. Another question here. How do you best define user traits? I know this can kind of depend on the retailer, but what are some common reoccurring traits that you see organizations tracking?
Yeah, so if you think about, let's say, grocery, someone who's shown a trait such as vegan, and even that as a trait is not just grocery now, but we see it quite often in beauty and healthcare. In fashion, it may be something such as it may be a certain fit, okay? Or it may be a certain style, or it may be a certain theme, it may be a certain kind of look. They're kind of things that would be traits. Activity is your basic, what you would expect. You know, what have you clicked on, and what have you searched for? What piece of content have you looked at? So activity is kind of let's say you're clicking and you're searching around and things like that. Traits are kind of, what are those kind of themes or kind of behaviors such as that kind of represent you.
Gotcha. And I think we got time for one more here. Let's say you're a new retail organization just getting familiarized with automation and AI. Where do we start?
Where do you start? Site audit. Yeah. The challenge that we often see in our industry is so much hype, around automation and AI, and this algorithm is going to fix all of your problems. And actually, do you know where all the problems are, or where do if you know where the problems are, how do you know which to go and prioritize, and where the level of effort to reward is best placed? We've been doing this for many years. We say, as an example, like we ran 24% of the top 100 retailers in the UK, and I think it's 22% of the top 200 retailers in Europe. Okay, so we've got not only the tools but also the experience as best practice as to where the golden nuggets are and where to go and prioritize. So the site audit allows us to go and review your site and give you a health check. And that's based off this criteria of all this experience we've got over the years and working with these retailers. And that will provide us with a view as to, are you actually in a pretty decent place or not? And depending on the results of that, there's kind of a maturity ladder that we can present back to you. Where to start, where we know you're going to get the easiest wins for the highest return, but also kind of what does that look like going forward as you continually optimize, but also as your team start to improve their enablement and capability with using these types of tools.
All right, fantastic. I think that's going to be our time for today. Thank you, Imran. Thank you, Melissa, for being here. Thank you to Crownpeak and CI&T for sponsoring today's webinar. You can visit their websites at crownpeak.com and CIANDT.com. And last but not least, thanks to all of you in the audience for your time and attention today.